Well, it was an extremely hard fought first victory of his career for Carlos Sainz, and I couldn't be happier for the guy in what was maybe the most bonkers British Grand Prix that I've ever seen. Dan, where do we even start with this one?
Well, we start with the 10 lap craziness after the safety car, I think.
Yeah, like that was
I mean,
insane.
we should talk
I
about
was losing it the whole time. I was
the
like,
this was one of these things where you could not get a handle on it. It was like,
yeah.
trying to catch the proverbial greased pig. Every time you thought you had it, it squirted away and everything changed.
Yeah, I swear, like between Leclerc, Perez, and Hamilton, they must have swapped around positions like a dozen times.
Yeah.
Like
It
it
was
was
it was
insane.
there was so many interesting things that happened.
Yeah.
Um, the first thing that happened of note, really, after they restarted the same. Well, I mean, I don't know where you want to pick it up. Do we want to talk about the last 10 laps or talk about everything leading up to that? So,
Um I don't know. Let's just talk about that real fast and then we
okay.
can kind of cover the rest.
Well, I think the first thing of note was that Hamilton, even though he was on soft tires, had no grip. And that is
Yeah.
becoming a theme for the Mercedes cars. And no matter, it seems like it doesn't matter what track they're on, more, they have a harder time getting their tires up to temperature than the other teams do, at least the other top teams. So,
Yeah.
it's like that just seems to be a problem. Even softs and, the people in even the commentators, were like, wow, can't get his tires up to speed. So the restart it was harder on him. But,
Yeah.
but anyway, so he's in 4th place and then and Leclerc's leading the race and then, Sainz, jumps in front of him and it's like, "Oh my
Yeah,
gosh." Well, we should
I
actually start before that. Did you catch what happened? The conversations he had with Ferrari
yeah.
HQ, during the safety car right before they got released.
Yeah, so they were basically telling Signs because they had let him pit even though he was in second when the safety car came out.
Yeah,
And I don't know why they gave him the pit preference over Leclerc, who was leading, but that's maybe a conversation we can have later. But regardless, he was in second and he had already pit.
right.
And so they were looking at Leclerc going, Leclerc's on hard tires, they're old tires. He needs a little bit of a cushion. So Carlos,
Yeah,
back up the field a bit and give Leclerc some breathing room was what they
a
said.
10 car
And Carlos
length,
was
a
like,
10 car
yeah, they
length.
wanted him to be like way back.
Yeah,
And Carlos was like, that's not the play here, guys.
yeah,
Like, I can win this. And like, this is not like you're jeopardizing me by doing that. And I'm the one who just pit, basically. He said it a lot more concise and eloquently. But yeah, it was like, that's not the play. We're not doing that.
yeah.
Like, I can win this thing.
They
And
wanted
they were
they
like,
almost they wanted
okay.
him to slow. They were kind of like going by the traditional book, even
Yeah.
though
Yeah.
he had the much faster car, at the end of the race, which was
Yeah.
clear. And he's like, "Excuse me, I don't think you guys understand what's going on here. I'm going to win the race."
Yeah, and in fairness, he's the one that got pole position. He's the one that didn't damage his front wing, which maybe we'll talk about in a little
Right,
bit as well.
right,
He's the one who had a perfectly intact car. He's the one who had like a near flawless weekend, and
right.
then they're asking him to back up the field for Leclerc, and he maybe felt slighted. Maybe felt like it was unfair, and it probably was a little unfair. And he was just like, "No, we're not doing that."
Right.
and thankfully, they accepted that because he may have gotten swallowed up by Perez and Hamilton, and then he would have been nowhere, and
Well,
that's not fair.
I mean, they had no choice. He was hell bent on doing what he was gonna do.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
He was looking at the
which
situation like, "I
I
can win this. You're not telling me I'm not winning
yeah,
this."
I like it when they got back on the microphone after telling him like twice, "Okay, 10 car
Yeah.
lap," and he just goes basically, "No, I'm not doing that."
No.
And they're like, "Okay, carry on."
Yeah. Okay,
They
copy, I think is
yeah,
what he said.
copy, yeah.
Yeah.
They had yeah, which I was cracking up at that point. It's like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
yeah.
he's not going to." I mean,
Yeah.
that those last 10 laps you could rewatch because over and over again because, all of a
Yeah,
sudden oh my
but
gosh.
before recording, we both were like, "I wanna watch those last 10 laps again," and I actually watched it through twice again.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
Yeah, yeah, we were both yeah, we were about to start recording, and I'm like, "Man, I wish we could watch those last 10 laps again right before we record." It's like, I was
Yeah.
thinking the same thing. "Okay, let's do it."
Yeah.
But that
Yeah.
was that was quite amazing. So,
Yeah.
and then you had so Sainz gets in front of Leclerc, and then you have Perez going after Leclerc, and then you have Hamilton because they, like Leclerc goes wide
Yeah.
and Perez is right there and he's pushing him off the track, and then you have Hamilton going, "Thank you very much," and he scoots in and
Yeah.
goes from fourth to second,
Yeah,
and the
and then
crowd
and
goes
then, like
wild, supposedly, and, and
yeah, it was just this really hectic section because Carlos gets past Leclerc fairly quickly,
yeah,
and meanwhile Hamilton is battling Perez. But after Carlos gets past Leclerc, he just takes off.
yeah,
He takes off down the road, and everyone else is kind of scrapping for the last two podium places.
yeah,
And so, yeah, Perez was eventually reeled in Leclerc, which wasn't that hard because again, all of Carlos, Sergio, and Lewis were all on fresh tires, and
mhm.
Leclerc wasn't. So it was like it's kind of inevitable. But man, I tell you, Leclerc put out a mighty fight
Oh
against those two.
yes.
It was
Well,
insane.
that was they all did. I mean, that was the
Yeah.
thing. I have never seen like if this was NASCAR,
Oh,
there would
jeez.
have been there would have been like 10 green white checkered moments.
Oh yeah,
They would
dude.
have been how these
Oh
guys
yeah.
managed to race that hard and nobody took anybody out or damaged anybody's car. I don't even think they
That is an
bumped.
excellent point. They were so clean and so professional, all
Yes.
4 of them.
Yeah,
Like,
and
hats
Science,
off to them.
knowing what Science had on the line, even he
Yeah,
pushed and was
yeah,
right next to Leclerc, like as close as he could get. And with his
yeah,
reputation and don't crash the car and everybody
yeah,
with all the pressure on him, he fought like crazy for that win.
yeah,
Yeah, he deserves every drop of that champagne, I'll tell you.
absolutely.
and and another notable thing is that Mick Schumacher scored his first points,
Yeah,
and
he
and he
finished
almost got
8th.
seventh. He almost took seventh place
Almost
away
got
from,
Max, yeah.
and they almost came together. They were pushing,
Yeah,
and that's and him again. He's the first time he's going to score points. You think he would just sit there in eighth place and go, "Okay, I'm going to sit
yeah,
here and shut
and
up."
be like, "Alright, I'll take 8th."
Yeah,
But no,
but
he was like,
no,
"No,
no, I'm gonna
I
get
can
7th.
get 7th, I'm going for it."
Yeah, and he thought, "Oh my,"
Yeah.
I for a minute, I thought, "This guy," but they didn't come together either. So or
No.
if they did, they held it together, but,
Yeah,
so he
there was a couple of times where, like, Max closed the door on Mick,
yeah.
and there was a couple of times where, like,
Oh, yeah.
Perez pushed, um, Leclerc, like, wide or
Mhm.
Hamilton or whatever. But it's all just kind of like what you would expect in hard racing, and I don't think any of it was unfair.
No,
So,
the only how the stewards were still going to review that one area where, that one issue where Perez cut a corner. And he lost a position, but he maintained another position. So
yeah.
there is a chance that he could get a post-race 5-second penalty, and the official
Yeah,
order gets
I
redetermined.
don't see that in what I've looked up, so I don't think that's the case,
Yeah,
but
that's
I also looked at that as, like, he kinda didn't have a choice. It wasn't like he
right.
deliberately cut the corner.
But at the
He was kinda
time,
forced into it from where Leclerc was,
yeah,
so
if you've checked the website and they haven't done it yet, then I don't think they're going to do it. But
yeah, the
um
current results is him in
second.
2nd,
Okay.
and the 5 play
Okay.
the 5 second would put him behind
Good.
Lewis, so,
Good. Because as
yeah.
it should be. The
Yeah.
other thing I was going to mention is that, to finish up with Mick Schumacher, is that
Oh,
he
yeah, yeah.
not only were these his first points, but he was in sixth place for the longest drought of a driver before his first points. He was
Oh,
he was
yeah.
starting to get into the record books where it gets, the kind of records you don't want, like the
Right.
largest number of at bats without a hit or something. You don't want to
Right,
be
right,
in
right.
that book. So, you know,
Yeah.
and but he managed to
Yeah.
pull it off. So okay, he's no longer
So
in
he
the.
was 6th?
He was the sixth longest drought in F1 history. Of
Wow.
races without a podium, or not.
Wow.
I'm sorry. Without a
Races without
without
points.
points. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Do
how
you
many?
have the rest of that list, by the way?
No, no.
Or
Who
no,
the
okay.
other five drivers were? No, no. I
Yeah,
don't have
yeah.
that. They just mentioned
I was just curious because, like, typically that doesn't happen. Like, if you don't get points, you don't race. So,
Well,
like,
yeah, but
they
in theory,
eventually, but
there's always going to be a list, even if it's only three races, right? So,
granted, yeah, yeah.
yeah. So I
Yeah,
don't know
but
who the other guys were, but but
yeah.
he was starting to, you know, to me, it wasn't, you know, what is this, the 10th race of the season, but
Yeah.
yeah. And it was starting to get weird. But anyway, but he got off the list. He got his first points. Good for him. The other thing is my boy Alonso. He was
Dude,
challenging.
I yeah, okay, so there was this one shot where, like, this one, like, aerial shot where, I think Leclerc had just taken his position back from Hamilton for 3rd,
Yeah,
and then it cuts to the aerial shot, and, like, the camera's been, like, focused on this intense battle between Leclerc and Hamilton,
yeah,
and Leclerc finally gets himself back up into 3rd, and then it pulls to the wide shot, the aerial shot, and who's literally on Lewis's bumper
right.
is Alonso.
He's
And I'm
knocking
like,
on the door. And I mean, at one point,
yeah,
he had his front tires even with Lewis's rear
yeah,
tires going into a
yeah, yeah,
corner. And the only
yeah,
problem was, like, as soon as they came out of a turn and they got in any kind of straight, man, boom, the Mercedes was gone. They
yeah,
just
yeah,
he didn't have the speed to keep up with him in the straights, but
yeah,
boy, in the corners they sure did.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
but Alonso finished, in what, fifth place, and so it was
yeah,
amazing,
5th. Yep,
behind
yep,
Leclerc.
yeah,
But yeah, that was really impressive, So then
yeah,
you had, yeah, that was, I don't know, the whole thing was just really, really good. And
yeah.
then there were some high points in this race, but we should start off with the not start off, but we should acknowledge that there was a red flag incident but before the
Yes.
first timing
Before
sector.
we change too far off,
Yeah.
there was another point I wanted to make. You were
Mhm.
mentioning longest runs without blank. You mentioned,
Yeah.
Schumacher, longest race starts without points. Carlos Sainz has the number 2 spot for longest race starts without a win.
Wow.
Um, guess who's number 1 on that list? Number of races before getting their first win.
Mhm. Some I have a feeling it's somebody like a Jensen Button or
Nope.
how many starts before their first win? Somebody currently racing?
Yes, sir.
That changes things.
Mhm.
Somebody currently racing. Why am I not? I feel like I know this. It's just I'm drawing a blank trying to come up with it. Perez. I'm gonna guess Perez.
Sergio Perez, you
Yeah.
are
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. It's pretty wild that at the end of, was it 2020, that Perez got his first win,
Yeah.
and he went immediately to the top of that list. And I remember reading at the time that somebody was like, "Look, if Carlos gets his first win, he would immediately slot into, like, I think it was 3rd at the time on that list, and now,
Wow.
of course, it's 2nd."
Yeah.
So, hats off to both those guys, especially Carlos today. He had a absolute heck of a run there. That was incredible.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. This was a race that it really did at one point, like at the midpoint of the race. Even the first third, maybe a third of the race was done. They still had 30 laps to go. It looked
yeah,
like this Hamilton was going to win this race. Like I thought, how can he not win this?
it looked like he had a really fair shot at it,
Yeah.
but he just both Perez and Leclerc had gave him so much of a fight that just slipped away from him. But
And they kept saying the undercut, this is gonna happen and that's gonna happen, but Lewis had a bad pit
oh
stop,
yeah, there was a couple of yeah, I forgot about that earlier in the race where there was a few times there was like pit stop times where they could have
he was
potentially
a
done things, but
second and a half longer, than he should be, and it cost him positions on the track, and
yeah,
but it was that could have been a better race, but at the same time, so he gets third again. But Leclerc had old tires and a damaged wing, so
yeah,
that plays into it.
yeah, yeah.
And again, you have Verstappen that had a damaged car, so he wasn't up in the,
He wasn't in the
he
mix at
wasn't in
all.
the mix either. So if those
Yeah,
two things had not been true, then you would have had those guys there. You would have had the first four cars being the first four cars, and then you
yeah.
would have had Hamilton being fifth, and you would have had Russell in there somewhere.
Yeah, that's the thing that I was looking at. I was like, as awesome as that fight was, I couldn't help but think, like, what would this look like if Russell and Verstappen were in the mix as well?
It would look like the
And
other races we've seen.
not necessarily. I mean, that was a pretty bonkers restart, and anything could have happened with that. So not necessarily, but I don't.
Which restart? Oh, the last one, the safety
The
after the
last one,
safety
yeah, yeah,
car.
yeah,
Well, I
yeah,
think whoever was in front, and it probably would have been Verstappen, to be honest. It looked like he had a commanding lead of the race, previously.
yeah, maybe,
I think
probably,
he would have been in front, and then yeah, but who knows going on behind him? But I still think what we have said up to now is true, that you have the number one and number two car. It really does appear Red Bull is number one, Ferrari's number two, Mercedes is number three. Even after this race, that's how it does appear.
yeah. I do think it's a little bit too early to say that Mercedes is now in the constructors' title fight, but at the end of the
Mm,
day, they looked really strong this weekend. Really, really strong this weekend.
hmm.
And they're closer to Ferrari than Ferrari is to Red Bull right now.
I
So,
don't know that I would say
actually,
that.
no, they're not. No, they're not.
I
It's
that's
about an even split.
I would
Sorry.
not. I mean, as far as you mean as far as where they are, like development of the car for the whole rest of the season? Or are you
I
just
mean, in the
talking?
constructor standings currently.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
and it's about an even split between them. Ferrari is about as far away from both Mercedes and Red Bull.
yeah.
So
Yeah. So, who knows what could happen? One thing we probably should note is there weren't any of the let's just call them the mechanical issues that we've seen in the other races, although it wasn't a super
true,
hot race,
true.
which played into their favor. But and the other thing, we haven't even touched on the rainy quali. That was,
Oh yeah,
but that
yeah.
was exciting. But the very first lap, there was a serious accident, and when the cameras
Yes.
when they don't show replays and they don't show you where the car wound up, it's a very scary situation.
Oh
And
yeah.
I thought Zhou was in big trouble in the Alpha. I thought,
Well, because yeah, from that first shot,
yeah,
it cuts to a shot from somewhere around turn 4 or 5, looking towards turns 1 and 2,
yeah,
and, it was a wide shot that it cuts to, and, like, as soon as it cut to that to show the leaders going through those corners,
yeah,
you just see an Alfa Romeo on its roof, up completely upside down, just sliding across the
yeah.
runoff,
You saw
and I was just
a
like,
car
"Oh my god."
flying through there, and the
Yeah.
estimated speed that he left the track was 160 miles an hour.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that was the speed. And
Oh,
so
man.
this again is a monumental hats off to the survival cell, safety cell, the construction of the
Yeah.
car, the halo, the Hans
Yeah,
device, the
th they
everything. I mean, now
yeah.
he did have one source of good fortune in his bad fortune, which that you always need that. But
Yeah.
and that is when the car came to rest. It came to rest with the, in essence, wheels against the wall. It was, it
Yeah.
landed on a catch fence, and all four wheels hit the catch fence instead of the cockpit, and
Right.
that was a blessing.
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
yeah, because if he had skidded on his roof and then gone,
Yeah.
to
Oh,
shave
man.
off all that speed,
Oh,
I
man.
don't
I
know
can't
what could
imagine.
yeah, you can get weird things could happen, anything on the other
Yeah.
side of that fence, could hit his helmet or protrude through or something, but whatever it was, the bottom of the car took the brunt, so the suspension, everything helped cushion the blow. And what's
Yeah.
interesting is that he was evaluated at the local medical center at the track and released and deemed to be fine. But
Yeah.
unfortunately, uh, Ocon, no, Albon or whoever it was,
Albon.
Albon
Yeah.
was taken. They actually went ahead and put him on the helicopter and took him to the
Yeah.
hospital.
His crash didn't seem that bad. Do you know what happened with
Yeah,
him?
what happened was two things happened. One was he got spun and had a nose first shunt into the wall on the right. And then when he
Okay.
ricocheted across the track, he got hit sideways by somebody else.
Okay.
So I think it was Alonso that hit him. No, no, no. Alonso kind of, well, though I
I
don't
think it
think there
was
was
Russell.
anybody's fault in this thing, but
Yeah.
Alonso hit him to start the mess because, he didn't know they were slowing up. Alonso did. This is what happens if
Okay.
there's a wreck on the first corner.
I found an article from motorsport.com published 40 minutes ago says Albon released from hospital after British GP F1 crash.
Okay, good.
So the Williams Formula One team has confirmed that Alex Albon has been released from hospital after
Excellent.
being checked over following his heavy crash in the British GP. And there's quotes and things if you care.
Yeah,
But
yeah, the Joe's car look in his accident was more dramatic and could have been
yeah,
fatal. It could have been a fatal. I mean, it was one of those crashes where they don't show you what's going on for a reason. And the other thing is they
yeah.
had a hard time extracting him from the car because
Well,
they
yeah,
just
there's a couple of feet that they put between these like the really soft barriers and then the fence just
mhm.
so it can move. So
Yep.
there isn't like a hard stop.
Yeah.
But I'm kind of wondering if they should maybe rethink that so that something like this doesn't happen in the future. I think that's something that they're probably looking into.
Yeah.
But like it just struck me as like what happened to him was like the worst case scenario
Right.
if the car was on fire, if he had serious injuries, like, because it's literally wedged in between a barrier and a fence, and you're just like, "That shouldn't happen." Like,
Right.
I don't know.
Well,
I think
at
we were
least they
really
got to
fortunate he
him.
was fine.
They got to him quickly. If there had been a fire, let's
Yeah.
hope they could have had it put out.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm trying to think, but yeah, you're right. If there had been a fire, it could have been bad because sometimes
Yeah.
if it gets big enough, quick enough, the crews can't get close enough to put it out because of the
Yeah,
heat.
because it looked like he didn't have room to get out of the cockpit
Mm-mm.
because the barrier was right there, is what it looked
Yeah, I
like.
haven't had a chance to go back because they weren't showing footage right, and then they had to restart the race. So
Yeah.
I that's one thing I'll have to go back and research and look at it. But they obviously F1 does review these situations in great detail, and they've made changes hundreds of times due to accidents. So
Oh my god. So, I'm seeing there's an ESPN article and the headlining image, the car is, like, at a what would that be? 80, 70 to 80-degree angle
yeah,
where, like, the upward part is the underside of the car.
yeah,
So, like, literally, I'm looking at this image, and I am no expert, but it does not look like he would have been able to get out on his own.
okay, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
he
That's
wasn't. They
scary.
had a hard time extracting it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank goodness for the fuel cells that,
Yeah.
in most
For
cases, as
real.
long as the car stays in one piece, it contains the fuel,
Yeah.
and that's why Grosjean's car caught fire because it literally split in half.
Right, right, right.
But
Yeah.
in this case, the cars stayed together. And what made it bad, just so everybody knows, is if the car had gone off on its wheels at 160 miles an hour, it would have slowed enough in the gravel to probably be
Yeah.
contained by the first set of barriers. But it
Right.
was the fact that it went through on the roof and then it flipped and kind of only half hit those soft barriers and then went flying into the
Yeah.
fence. And, it
Well,
was
and
just,
also the roll bar on the top that they, like, attach the cranes and stuff to, that's
yeah,
like this it's supposed to be this really, really, really solid structure, safety structure, that broke when the car first um, turned over.
Yeah, yeah, that
And he was literally sliding on the top of, like, the air intake and the halo is
yeah,
what it
yeah,
was
the
sliding
halo
on.
is what's really that's I've seen that
Yeah,
happen before. The halo is really the protective area.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Because if that halo wasn't there, all of that force would have been on the air intake and his helmet
right.
rather than the halo, and,
Yeah,
like,
it
God
would have
knows
been
what
on
would have
his
happened
head,
with
and
that.
when he skidded through the gravel,
Yeah,
it could have broke his neck easily. I
yeah,
mean, we hate to be
yeah,
so graphic, but
yeah.
that halo exists, even though
Literally
it
just saved another guy's life
right,
today,
right.
like
Even though it
yeah,
limits the vision a little bit, and you have that center thing and going down the middle, it's absolutely necessary, and it has saved,
yeah,
like you just said, saved another life. There's
yeah.
no doubt in this case because of the gravel, because the car digs in and that could hit your helmet, and then it would smack your helmet against the
Mhm.
side of the car. And
Yeah.
helmets are great, but they're not impervious, as we
So
found out.
that's what, just 3, maybe 4
Who
drivers that the
knows?
Halo has saved already?
I don't know. You'd have
Like,
to go back and count. I'd say anytime a car goes upside down. I mean,
yeah,
and well, look at last year at Silverstone.
yeah,
When Max wound up, or not last year at Silverstone, but when Max wound up,
Monza?
yeah, Monza, when he wound up
Yeah,
his
yeah,
rear wheel on top of Lewis, it could
yeah,
have saved his Lewis's bacon that day.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So yeah, this was interesting. This was an interesting race.
yeah.
But that was a serious incident that slowed the race up quite a bit.
It did,
Um,
yeah, it was about an hour delay.
yeah, 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 close. At
Yeah,
least it might have been. I didn't even pay attention to how long it took because I
yeah,
was watching live. And
yeah, yeah.
it kept me interested because it was like, "Okay,
Yeah, no,
let's
I
get the
watched the
good
whole
news,
thing,
guys.
but
Let's hear the good news."
yeah, yeah,
And they did not have cameras in the pits, like in the Alpha pit. They were keeping the camera away from
mhm.
that pit, and it was like and the other thing that really concerned me, to be perfectly honest, that I have not seen in a long time, was the fact that um, George Russell, and this should be talked about. He bailed out of his car instead of
Yes.
trying to get his car started again. He bailed out and ran towards Sonoda
Yeah.
because he thought,
Yeah, or,
and
Zhou, but
boy,
yeah.
Joe, I'm sorry, but that there's only that was reminiscent of people bailing out to go help Nicky
Yeah.
Lauda, when he had his
Yeah,
fire,
yeah.
and when I saw that,
I
I've
thought
only
about that,
seen that
like
in very, very severe accidents, and when he did
yeah,
that, and he's kind of motioning people to whenever you see a guy at a race motioning the safety crew to get over, it's not good.
yeah.
It's
I
serious.
thought that was he literally was the first guy on the scene
He
because he was
was.
part of the crash.
Yeah,
And so he literally they showed an onboard from him getting out of his car. He was, like, frantically getting out of his car.
yeah,
And he didn't stop for anything, he just ran straight over. I think he may have told the marshals, "Don't touch my car," because in the post or
yeah,
I guess during the race interview with him, he was basically he said that he told them, "Don't touch the car," he
yeah. That
wanted to
was
drive it
by
back to the
the end of
pits,
the right before
but
the red flag was over. They had an interview with him, and he said that.
yeah, yeah. So he may I don't know when he said that, but
No,
regardless,
it
like
was right before the red flag ended. They did an
no,
interview
no,
with
no,
him.
no, when he told the marshals to
Oh,
not touch his
when
car.
he was over there with them. But
Yeah, yeah,
the bottom line is they had to make a decision. They couldn't push
yeah.
it out of the gravel, and so it's like, and he couldn't get it to
Well, his
start.
car wasn't in the gravel. His car was on the pavement.
Well, what?
He was missing a rear wheel,
Uh,
but he
yes.
could have theoretically the car was still moving and he could have kept driving to go back to the pits, but he stopped the car and got out of it to go run after and
Well,
check on Joe.
my interpretation was the engine stopped during the whole thing.
That is true.
He lost fire and he couldn't get it restarted.
That
S-
I don't know whether or not he
He
could have,
That's what he
but yeah.
said. He said that
Yeah.
he couldn't get the car restarted, and that was really the issue. But
Yeah.
he was in. If he had the car started, he would have been over there. But he could not get the car
Yeah.
restarted, and
But
before they
yeah,
could do anything, blah blah
regardless,
blah. Yeah,
I think it's one of those rules that you kind of can't make an exception for.
no,
It's like if a car gets mechanical assistance during during the race, it's DNF'd, and that sucks. But I think it's kind of a heroic move from him for him to just be like,
Yeah.
"I'll take the L. I don't care. I need to check on this guy.
Well, I
I'm the
don't think
first
he
one
was.
here."
Yeah, my guess is he wasn't even thinking about all that. I think
Yeah,
he just
probably.
saw another
Probably not.
driver in need, and he was
Yeah.
there, and he wasn't going to just sit there and look at it. He took action, and that shows
Yeah.
you what his character is.
Yeah.
And then the
Absolutely.
driver, once he was probably, once he saw either the safety crew was there or he was convinced the other driver was okay, then he became a racer again, and he wanted to get his car
Right.
moving.
Right.
And that kind of thing. But and and part of this could be, if we're real honest, is it looked like he's the one that caused the problem.
No, from the
He
overhead, it was, Gasly got in between the 2 of them and clipped, um, uh, Russell's left rear tire, and
but then
that spun
Russell made a
him to
strong move to the left, which is what took out Joe.
it
And
was
and and
at
Gasly
the
had
at the
already
point
backed
of
out.
it was at the time of impact when he moved over. If you look
I
at the
don't Yeah, I,
overhead,
I did.
he
I
he
did
clips
watch
the
it,
wheel
and
and it he basically the car turns as his wheel gets hit, is what it
go
looked like to me. I could be
go
wrong,
back
but
and watch it from the Gasly's camera, and you'll see something
okay.
interesting, because everybody slowed up, so Gasly did his best to slow, and there was a gap there, and then Gasly kind of goes, "Ooh," and he jumps for this gap, and then it looked like, now maybe he didn't have a choice, but it looked like Russell moved over to the left and then clipped Gasly, and then Gasly backs out, and then he jumps to the left and he hit Joe. And that's what it but he that could have been due to a puncture. He could
Yeah,
have had something dragging him over there. But it
I think it was. I'm
yeah.
looking at it. Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. I'm looking at the onboard right now. It was full on contact from
Yeah.
his front right into Russell's left rear, and it
Yes.
was it was 100% because of that
But
the
then see, he backs out and then Russell jumps across the track and
no, no,
hits
no, no, no. I'm watching the onboard right now. It was
yeah.
100% because of the contact from Gasly.
In what sense? Gasly didn't send Joe off, right?
No, he sent Russell into Zhou.
Yes. Even though he
He
was
hit
between them.
correct. He hit Russell's left rear
Yeah.
tire, which caused Russell to careen off to the left and hit Joe.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
So yeah, and now I'm not necessarily blaming
No, no, no.
Gasly for that because
No, that's a
it
racing
was all
incident.
drivers involved. Because if you see a gap, you go for it, and then it started to close, and he starts to back out,
Right.
but it was too late. So it was like it's not Gasly's fault, but
No, no, no.
that is what happened.
It happened very fast because it happened at,
Yeah, yeah,
like 160 miles an hour.
yeah, yeah.
But
So
but if you get those cars, especially in those first corners, you do get them on the roof sometimes. And that's,
yeah, it does
oh
happen.
man, that was, but again, good news. Everybody's been released from the hospital. Nobody's got
Yeah.
any serious
Well, and
injuries.
before the broadcast was over, I saw they broadcast a conversation that I think was taking place live at the time between Joe and Stefano Domenicali, the
Hmm.
F1 president or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, so like he was checking on Joe and being like, "Hey, are you good?" And
Yeah.
Joe was like, "Yeah."
Yeah, like
So
I said, he was released from
yeah,
the,
yeah,
local
yeah,
medical facility
yeah.
there at the track. They have those at
So
every track now, and
yeah,
he didn't have to go to. They just held him for a little bit, probably making sure he didn't have any kind of head injury, and no
yeah,
signs of a concussion or anything. And
yeah,
so yeah, that was it could have been worse. It was all good. It was a scary moment.
yeah.
But like I said, all good news, and then they got back to business. But bad
Hmm.
weekend for Alfa Romeo, because Bottas wound up, he
Yeah, and
had a
then
tough weekend and
yeah.
he had to retire the car. He had a mechanical and had to
Yeah, I
retire the
didn't
car.
hear what was the problem with that. I
Yeah,
know Ocon had a fuel pump issue, but that was later. I
I
don't
don't think they
remember.
mentioned why. They just rolled it into the garage and it was a retirement. Because there was too much going on during the race to.
Yeah,
I don't
let
think by the
me.
time I listened to the end of it, I didn't see I haven't gone back to look as to what the cause was, but other than that, with the front leaders, they had damage. Verstappen, the reason he was slow was he damaged the under the floor of the car on the
Yeah,
curbs.
it looked like there was some debris that he ran over. It was either Perez's front wing from the opening, the first restart on like lap 4 or whatever. It was either his front wing end plate that had come off, or it was Leclerc's, and
Yeah.
or it might have been some other debris, but it looked like it was one of the two that Verstappen hit and that damaged his floor.
Yeah, damaged it. Yeah, his floor was damaged, and then the car was never right after that.
Yeah, yeah,
And so his day was over.
yeah.
But
He was not happy.
no, no,
Yeah.
no, but he stayed out there, which was good, and
Yep.
did the best he could.
Came in seventh, which is like
Yeah,
could have been worse.
he got points.
It's not that bad.
He got
Yeah.
points. And both Red Bulls finished.
Yeah. Speaking of the front wing end plate from Paris, he had one of the most impressive races because
Yeah.
he literally on lap like 5 or 6 or whatever, he gets pulled into the pits to fix
Yeah.
that front wing,
Yep.
and he came out second to last on the road and then came back to get
Yeah.
second. Like, that was just so impressive from
Yeah,
him.
he made up a handful of spots, and then he kinda sat there for a while, and I'm like,
Yeah,
that's not good. He's gonna be there for a
yeah,
while." But I thought, well, they did put he has had his tires swapped. He went to hard tires, so you never
yeah.
know. He's going to move up the ranks.
Yeah, he
And
on those hard tires, he got all the way up into, like, 5th or 4th, and then for the second restart at, like, 10 to go,
yeah,
they brought him in for softs, and then he was able to battle from 4th up to 2nd, which
yeah.
was, like that was crazy.
Yeah, it was pretty
But
impressive.
or he might have been 3rd at that point because Lewis might have been 4th, I don't recall. But at any rate,
Yeah.
still, 2nd from 2nd to last is always impressive.
Oh, yeah,
So,
absolutely. Yeah, that was pretty cool.
yeah.
So, yeah, that was it was definitely a I'll yeah, the fans got their money's worth at this race, let's put
I'll
it that way.
say.
It
Yeah,
started
for
with a
real.
bang and ended with a bang, and in the middle was a lot of strategy and some head scratching as far as, "Why are they doing this way?"
Yeah.
It did appear that Ferrari appeared to be struggling with logic as far as, you know
Yeah, we brought this up in Monaco, and there's times that they have just really weird strategy decisions, or
Yeah,
they're just not even thinking things through. And I think we saw that again today because it was like there was a couple of things where I was like, what are they doing?
right. Yeah, well, it's just sorta like, they don't appear to be the well-oiled machine that either
Yeah,
Mercedes or Red Bull are in terms of having, like, predetermined strategies, or, or they're being just way too mechanical about it, and they don't
yeah,
have enough, variables in their program to come up with the right decision at the right time. They
yeah,
need a more robust system of reviewing things, and
yeah,
it was what it seems like to me. And they kind of have a real old school mentality of team orders, like, okay, well, he's in front, let him win. It's like, no, I'm faster. And then they did seem to
yeah.
respond
That
to
might
that.
be it.
Here's what bothered me is is they were, Leclerc was behind Sainz. This is like, still, lots of race to go.
Right.
And he's like, I'm faster, let me pass him. And he was. And they told Sainz, like, well, hang on, we're gonna give him a lap or two, and he has to come in under this speed, and then we're gonna leave him there. And if he doesn't, then we'll swap. But
Yeah,
all the while, Hamilton is making up room on the pair of
Hamilton.
them.
Yeah, he's just reeling him
And
in.
so you can't do that. You
Yeah,
you literally can't do that. If Leclerc's faster and you've got a Hamilton coming up behind you, and Perez wasn't even in the mix at that moment, and if he's reeling in the team, and if Leclerc is faster, you don't give Hamilton another couple laps
yeah,
to reel you in. You just don't do that. You make a decision as a team. It's like, no,
yeah.
we're gonna no Leclerc, let him by, and if you wind up being faster, we'll swap back again. But we cannot let Hamilton catch up. You know,
Yeah, it's that indecision, and this is not something we see from either Red Bull or Mercedes. I mean, you go look back over the
yeah,
last few years, and any time Bottas is out in front and he's just got and Lewis just has way better pace for whatever reason,
yeah.
they swap him immediately. And vice versa, though that was a much rarer occurrence between those two. But
Well,
then
it
also
it
like
just
we've
seemed
even seen that this year with Max and Perez. Like there were a couple of times, I think Spain was one of them, where Max was just way faster on the road and they just swapped him immediately. There was no
right.
arguing. There was no indecision. It was just like, this is what we're doing. He's faster.
I didn't see it as indecision. They just weren't taking into account the fact that they were being reeled in by Mercedes. It's like they weren't going for the
That could
win.
be.
They weren't necessarily going for the win. They just wanted to make sure the fastest car was in front of the other one. But they were kind of blind to the bigger picture of, that you
Yeah.
guys have a real chance to win the race here. It's just
Yeah.
it's kind of like they had
There was
blinders
a
on.
there was a lot of weird strategy calls from Ferrari. I mean, they
Yeah.
managed to pull it out in the end with Carlos getting the win, but I kind of feel like Leclerc was robbed. Like he should have gotten second,
Hmm.
personally. And I think it's so hard because there's
Now,
so much
now
nonsense
where
happened
did the
during this
robbery
race
occur, do you think? If that's true.
progressively throughout the race.
Even though he started in first after the last safety car.
I think that was another one of their decisions that they let. We mentioned this a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
They let Carlos take the pit stop and not Leclerc. Now, it's possible. I From my recollection, which could be flawed, but from my recollection, it did not seem like this was the case, but it could be possible that Leclerc was already past the pit entry. And Sainz wasn't, so he came in. But I don't think Leclerc was that far ahead.
Yeah. I
And
I don't
so
think he was robbed, but I just think, and he did have a
I
damaged
don't think he
car,
was
and
robbed
he
of the
had
win
older
necessarily.
tires, and yeah, you'd have to
Yeah.
go back and really look, okay, where would have that have put him on the track,
Yeah.
and things like that. But, because I think he had Leclerc drove a good race, but he did have a slightly damaged car that took away some downforce
That
on
is fair.
yeah.
That is fair.
So yeah, that's the only thing. I mean, I guess I was just curious, as to what you were
Well,
seeing that led you to that conclusion, because
no,
I
I don't
think it
I
was
yeah, I don't think he was robbed of a win. I think he was
okay.
robbed of a podium. I think that some indecision, because if he had some better pace earlier on and they just let him go by Carlos earlier and he was able to
Mm,
build out more of a
yeah,
lead, like any number of things could have happened. And it was like, and also again, he was in front and should have been given preference for pit stops, though I don't know.
yeah.
At any rate, I
Well,
think he should have been on the podium, and I think
mhm.
that strategy is more of the reason as to why he wasn't. But
Yeah,
I
and
could
I
be wrong.
think what's also interesting is Hamilton was during the week this week. He was very honest about telling people, "Look, we're not saying we're back. Like, quit saying that."
Yeah, yeah,
He's like,
yeah,
"At this race with this equipment, yes, with these upgrades, but the other guys
yeah,
brought upgrades too." He says,
yeah,
like, so I think we saw a really good race for Mercedes, but it's they definitely are not. I don't think they've jumped up like a peg on the board yet. They it's just this was their best chance, and it was their home GP, and this is the one they really wanted Hamilton to win at. And he drove his heart out trying to win this
yeah,
race. He did everything he
yeah,
could. There's no question. He didn't leave anything on the table. He
yeah.
put it all out there.
Personally, yeah, yeah. I think he had such an amazing performance today. That was
Oh
just
yeah.
outstanding. But personally, I do think Mercedes has made a solid step forward. The problem is it seems like the car requires a like super smooth surface, which we have in Silverstone.
Well, yeah, that's what I
Um,
was getting at. It's like for this
yeah,
particular race, sure they brought upgrades, but like he said, as did everybody else.
yeah,
And this was like their best chance because of the smooth surface.
yeah.
Things like that. I don't think they're going to get a much better track to play on.
Well, the next two up is Austria in a week. There's a double header, so the Red Bull Ring in Austria, and I
Yeah.
believe that's a pretty smooth surface. And then France after that, 2 weeks later, and France is a very smooth surface.
Hmm.
So, because that they recently redid that whole track and they maintain it really well. So, like,
Yeah, but
they
it's an
could.
older track that I don't think is going to favor the Ferraris because they're you know
Oh, I was
or
talking
I'm
about
sorry,
Mercedes, but yeah.
the Mercedes.
I mean, whether or not it favors them, I don't know. I was just
Yeah,
talking about the surface, the
yeah,
smoothness of the surface and lack of bumps.
sure, sure.
And so I think they could have a solid showing in Austria and France, and then you have Hungary after that. And I don't know I know that I like the
Underly.
track, but I don't know much about the
Yeah.
surface,
I
so
I
who
guess
knows?
my point was, they're third. They're a third
Yes.
place team, and they're a solid third. They're not like a barely third. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
these are the top 3 teams, but I have seen nothing yet that indicates to me that Mercedes is going to be vying for a championship this year.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
still think that's quite the stretch. They are 124 points behind Red Bull, and
yeah,
that's a heck of a gap.
no, it's not gonna
So,
happen.
yeah.
It just that's not the way this sport, you don't win at that point,
No.
after 10
No.
races, if you're at that point, you don't win races that way. I mean,
No. No,
we're
Red Bull would have to
virtually at the
completely
halfway
implode.
point, almost at the halfway point. I mean, this is the season.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's good though. The question though is there still reliability issues as summer gets hotter and continues, and
Mhm.
yeah, boy, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna say who's gonna bring this home, in it for constructors or drivers championship.
Yeah, like, obviously, Red Bull still has the pretty significant advantage, but,
Yeah,
like we saw today, I mean, anything can happen, anything can go wrong, and,
right.
it's still Ferrari's still very, very much in the fight. 60 they're let me just run through the constructors really fast.
Sure.
Red Bull is, at 328 points,
Okay.
and Ferrari is at 265. So there's something like 60 and change points behind, or
Okay.
roughly 60 points behind
All
Red
right.
Bull. So that's doable. It's rough and it's going to be difficult, but that's doable.
Yeah.
But then you have Mercedes behind Ferrari at 204. So they are 61 points back from Ferrari.
And then yeah, and then they're another, 60 back from, Red Bull or whatever, 50,
Right,
whatever it
right.
was.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah,
and then down in fourth, you have McLaren on 73. So 204 to 73. There is
no
like no
chance.
shot McLaren gets third this year.
No.
There is
No.
no shot.
No, exactly. This is why I'm saying these are
Yeah.
very clearly for 1, 2, 3. In this at this time
Yeah.
right now.
Well, and to be honest though, you have Alpine in fifth on 67 points. If they can get their reliability under control, they get fourth this year. Like they've just
Yes,
had a more consistent, solid showing than McLaren has.
and that has a lot to do to Fernando, but I think they will.
Yeah.
I mean, Norris just keeps just performing. He did so
Oh, dude.
well. He
Yeah.
did so well in this race. Poor Daniel. Norris just makes him look
Yeah.
horrible, but Norris
Yeah.
he was right in the beginning. He was at one point he was going to pass Hamilton. Well, and this
Yeah.
is the other thing we should talk about. We haven't even mentioned this yet. If there had not been a red flag incident in back of the pack, this would have been a different race.
Can
Hamilton
we actually pin that so I can run through the rest of the standings? Because that is actually a great
Okay,
topic.
okay, sure.
And this is
Yeah,
just really quick here.
let's circle back to that.
Yeah, yeah. I won't let you forget that because I really do want to talk about that. Okay, so Alpine was in fifth on 67 points. We have Alpha on 51, Alfa Romeo, and then AlphaTauri in seventh on 27. So you have a pretty tight battle, 51 points in
Yeah,
sixth up to 73 points in fourth. So the fourth, fifth, and sixth are all relatively close to each other. And then you have seventh, eighth, and ninth still relatively close to each other
yeah,
with AlphaTauri in seventh on 27 points, Haas in eighth on 20 points, and Aston in ninth on 18. And
yeah,
then Williams still in 10th on 3. So yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
Unfortunately, Aston's right there with Williams.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah. The point being is the first start of this race.
Yes.
Hamilton got a huge leap on everybody,
Oh yeah.
and he was in second place. He passed 2 cars going into the
Hmm.
first corner, and and
I think he was third.
Verstappen passed Sainz, and Hamilton passed everybody else. So
I think he didn't get past Science, but he got past Leclerc and Perez. Hamilton did.
because
I think he just jumped the two of them.
he started
He
fifth
started
and went
fifth.
to third. Yeah, okay,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
okay, yeah,
But
exactly. So
still,
it
like
was
that was
Verstappen,
yeah.
Sainz, Hamilton, which is
Yeah.
huge.
Oh
He
yeah.
passed a Red Bull and a Ferrari to get. He jumped from fifth to third in the first
Yeah.
corner. And he looked racy, he looked great,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and I'm like, "Oh boy, this is not good." What happened at the start here? And
Yeah.
and I can't remember ever seeing this before in a Formula One race, but they have a red flag, and apparently it happened before the first, they went through the first scoring sensors. So even though you could demonstrate where everybody was, the rule book says you redo a standing start.
Yeah.
And Lewis didn't get nearly as good of a jump in the second start. He got a horrible, he lost a couple places in the second one.
Yeah, so there was a bit of confusion around that, and I remember the commentators were equally confused. I was looking at that going, the incident happened literally at turn one, and
Yeah.
I was looking at that going, they're probably going to restart with the correct with the qualifying order, is what how I was looking at it, because
But based
they
on,
hadn't
yeah,
even.
it's based on rules though.
No, I know,
It's
but
spelled out. I mean,
okay,
so
granted.
what was your opinion based on?
Yeah, well, based on the red flag came out before they had even gotten to turn 3. So I was looking at that going,
Mm,
I don't think enough of the lap has happened for any of the places that were made up or lost to count. And then it turns out that the rules actually have, like, I think it was called a safety car line, something like that. And it's basically this line, they have several of them throughout the track just to mark things.
mm.
And it's
Yeah.
basically the rules were that if you don't get to the next safety car line, you basically take the order based on the previous one, and that was at the beginning of the straight, where the
Yeah,
start for the
there's
straight. So,
safety car scoring lines, where they
yeah,
determine the order, and I
yeah,
think it's done by telemetry, to be honest.
it could be,
so
yeah,
that they can record it digitally. But yeah, that's
I
what,
would imagine
and they
so.
did not reach the first safety down. So it's really okay, chapter 3, paragraph 2, subsection 5,
Right,
point B,
right,
in
right,
the case that blah blah blah. So that's all there is to it. And,
yeah,
and just just for people that listen to us to know, it's not like some guy sitting up there determining, it'd be more fun to have a restart. Let's just do it all over.
right,
It's not
yeah,
like that. It's not like a a Massey type thing where
yeah.
you
I
know
was gonna
where
say it's
probably
not like
lost.
Michael Massey from last year, where he
Yeah,
was kind of
just going,
flying by the
let's
seat
just
of his
let these
pants.
guys pass and nobody else. Which, frankly, I still think he made the right decision there, and he made some of the right decisions, some wrong ones. But according
Well,
to the rules,
let's
anyway.
not open those can of worms,
Well, according
please.
to the rules, but the wrong thing was not letting everybody pass. It was right to let the cars in front
Can we
pass.
not open that
No,
can
well,
of
I'm just saying,
worms?
according to the rules, that part was right. But anyway, in this case, again, they were if you refer to the rules, and it's it's just like a computer program, if then else. So it's
Right.
not. It doesn't matter who was in front. Or gee, Lewis got such a good start. Can't we just do it this way? It's like no,
Right,
it
right.
doesn't work that way, guys.
Yeah.
So and that was the case. But unfortunately, where Lewis had just a fantastic start at the
Yeah.
beginning, he had a horrible start in the second one, and it went against him the whole race. It
Yeah.
just didn't. It really affected his race because then all the competition was happening way in front of him. So
Yeah.
for the beginning of the race, and then anyway, but that was just something worth noting, is that if there had not been a red flag at the beginning, this race would have been different.
It would have been so different.
It would have been so
But
different.
I don't know that it would have been as wild and exciting. So I'm happy
No,
with how
no,
things
no,
turned
no.
out.
The ending wouldn't have been anything like what it was.
Yeah.
So
I'm
because you
happy
would
with
have
how
had
things turned
Russell in
out,
there.
especially since everybody was okay from that crash. But
Oh yeah,
yeah, this was that was something. Oh
it was
yeah,
great.
the second safety car, well, the first actual safety car, the second restart at like 10 to go or whatever, that was caused by Ocon's engine biting the bullet.
Yeah,
He had a fuel pump issue, like I said earlier, and he wasn't able to get
he
sufficiently out
stopped
of the
on track.
track. He
Yeah, he
stopped
stopped on
literally
track.
on a straight. So
That was going to be a virtual safety car,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So
And then what else? There was some foreshadowing from Saturday into Sunday, if you think about this.
yeah,
Q1 and Q2 in qualifying were relatively uneventful. Q1 was really boring because it was raining, and
yeah,
like Max never even bothered going out. It's like, what's the point or whatever. So, and then well, that was practice, but in Q1 it was relatively boring. Q2 was relatively boring, and then Q3 was a madhouse. The last 5 minutes
It was
of
bonkers.
Q3 was, like, super exciting. So if you haven't seen anything and you're listening to us and then you wanna go back and watch it, seriously, I would watch Q3 from Saturday, the last bit of
Yeah,
qualifying, the last half of it, really, the last
yeah,
10 minutes would be fine.
yeah,
And then, because the cars all go out in these 15-minute segments, they set like a banker lap, and then they go back inside and they figure out what their tires and blah blah blah. But they
right.
go back out when they want to improve in Q3. To see the final grid placement. Everybody wants to go out and get 2 or 3 laps in at the very end, and it was wild the way it kept going, and again, you thought it was going to go one way, and then it kept changing. So,
Yeah,
and it was like the end of the race here, and then of course, obviously watch the beginning, see the red flag part, see the restart, and then if you have very limited time, then just fast focus or fast forward to the last 10 laps, and you'll have a pretty good idea what went on in the race.
yeah,
So anyway,
yeah. No, it was pretty wild. I remember one of the highlights from qualifying was in Q3, and it was one of the most impressive pieces of driving I've seen this year. I think it's up there with. I don't know if you saw that clip of Colton Herta in IndyCar from like a month or two ago,
mm-mm.
where it was that crazy rain race because apparently impressive driving happens
Oh
in the rain.
yes, yes.
Where yeah, it was that rain road course,
I know which one you're talking about. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but it's the Indy 500 track. They just do the road course version of it, and it was in
Yes.
the wet. And Colton Herta was doing. He was in second, and he was trying to pass the guy in front of him. I don't remember the guy's name, but the rear end of the car kicks out, and he literally drifts this thing around this corner in
Yeah.
the wet, and perfectly controls the car and saves it. And like anytime you see any of these cars, Indy cars, F1 cars, pretty much any open wheel car, if the rear end goes, you're gone. That's where all of the weight is. Like, that's it. You're done. And he just,
Unless you're Max Verstappen or Colton Herta or
right,
or
right,
the top guys where you can actually control front and rear slide. I mean, like, that's
right.
amazing.
Yeah. And he did that. He literally drifted this thing around a corner, saved it, kept on and kept on going and won the race.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's insane. And then that kind of thing happened with Max in
Yes.
qualifying where he exits a corner, the rear end goes around, he does a complete 360, catches the car and keeps going.
Well, and he was sliding intentionally prior to that and to
Yeah.
give himself the best launch. Like, he had
Yeah.
total control of the car. The car is literally like an extension of his mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, that guy is amazing. He really is. I gotta say, he is the best driver out there. And as long as he has a good car, I think this is his season to lose. But
Yeah.
anyway,
But no, I was just so impressed by that. And it was so funny because like in the press conference, the post qualifying press conference, he was joking. He was like, yeah, I was just trying to warm up the tires
yeah, right, exactly.
by spinning the car. But no, and what was the funniest part though is that lap that he set, he kept going and committed to the lap, and he was only a second behind Leclerc's time at
Yeah.
that point in time. It was like
Oh, he was
it
he
was
was
wild.
he was setting blistering times, but then he
Yeah.
screwed up on one corner, and Sainz came in and he got pulled. So good for
Yep.
him.
Yeah. So anything else you wanted to mention about the race?
I think we covered it. Great race. I mean, this has been
Yeah.
a fantastic season. We have
Oh,
not been
absolutely.
disappointed yet. So,
Absolutely.
and the good news is we don't have to wait 2 weeks for the next race.
I know
Woo!
it's double header. We're going to Austria in a week where there is the second sprint of the year. The
Oh,
third
good.
one being in Brazil. The third
Yeah,
one's in Brazil.
yeah,
So,
Interlagos.
yeah. And so again, I could be wrong, but literally everything I've read says Austria is the next sprint. So,
Well,
I'm
I hope you're
trusting
right. I hope you're
I'm
right.
trusting
Because
what I read.
that makes a great Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it starts, and then yeah, it
Yeah.
makes just a great weekend. So woohoo!
Yeah. So that's the
I'm
Red
loving
Bull
it.
Ring. It's always an exciting track. It's a little bit shorter for as far as tracks go, but it's always fun. And then 2 weeks after that, we have another doubleheader with France moving into Hungary the week after that.
Yeah.
And then there's the summer break where we pick things up with Belgium. So a
Yeah.
great run of tracks coming up, and we don't have to wait too
A
long. So
long dry spell. But
yeah,
Spa's waiting on the end. So
yes, yeah, I love Spa. So
Spa's
yeah,
awesome.
like I said last time out, I love Silverstone. It always gives great racing,
Yeah.
and it did not disappoint. So
Nope, they had 140,000 people there. I think that's
yeah,
the 150 is the record, because it is kind of out there and it's,
yeah,
just harder to get there. But yeah, they had a big crowd.
yep,
They weren't disappointed, and it was just a fantastic race weekend, to be honest.
yeah,
And
yeah.
congratulations to Carlos for his
Absolutely.
first win, and congratulations to Mick for his first championship points.
Absolutely. So, all right, that's going to do it for us for today. We will be back in 1 week's time for our weekend recap and reaction to the Austrian Grand Prix. So, we'll see you then. Thanks so much for tuning in. And until next time, take care of yourselves.